Hello everyone, this is Helios Raven. I tell you how you do it, even if you don't care. And today, as promised, took me a while. I do apologize, but here I'm going to do finally a video on the army that I'm using in the 40k league happening down at my local game store, Brothers Grimm. And it's an Eldar army. It's 1850 points. I think I'm like 5 or 6 points shy of the 1850 cap. And so far, right now, I'm 0 for 0. Yeah, not doing too well, but partly is my fault, partly is just bad dice rolling. Like, there were some games where I could have dominated if my dice didn't just stink at rolling, and there are other times where I just made huge mistakes. Excuse me, it's very hot today. And so, it's actually changed from this. This is the original setup that we got here, so we're going to go over it briefly, and I will do a close-up of more of the existing army list, because this one's fairly old right now, so I don't want to, I don't think you guys want me to sit here and do, a quick pan of the exact same models over and over again. So, this is the first setup here, and first and foremost people are going to notice is there's no Far Sphere at all, there's no Warp Spiders at all, and there's not a whole lot of tanks. And so mainly this is all I was working with what I had, primarily. So I wasn't going out and spending a whole lot of money to get what I needed to basically build what most people would consider the tournament's Eldar. So, and I don't have an Artec as well, or however you want to pronounce it. I instead picked up a Phoenix Lord. Aureliath for the Shadow Spectres, because the guys running the league decided that they kind of like the Shadow Spectres, and they're like, oh great, a fast attack choice that doesn't stink, except minus the Warp Spiders being the only fast attack, in my personal opinion, and a lot of people at my gaming store's personal opinion, the only fast attack worth taking on the Eldar. And so, I picked up the Phoenix Lord, which is, like, in his first game, he was phenomenal. Out of all my dudes, he's the one that would not drop. And he was and he took a lot of fire and just was kept on going. I had a squad of Shadow Spectres to go with him, so I basically had, a portable prism cannon that can move, shoot, move. I had a squad of Pathfinders. All of them were Pathfinders because every time I do that, I, roll lots of 5s and 6s when I roll for hitting for them, so I get a lot of good shots with them. I then have a squad of Fire Dragons, which I keep in a Falcon. The Falcon was armed with the Bright Lance and Holofields and Vector Engines. I like Vector Engines, especially if I'm going in games where I really need to move across the board. I like having that option of being able to essentially protect the dudes inside of them. And, avoid the whole, wreck thing and all that stuff. And, again, some people may not think Vector Engines are worth it right now, but it was points. I need the points. And Holofields, which are amazing. Basically, all my tanks survived being destroyed for good 3-4 turns just because of Holofields. Then I got a squad of 10 guardsmen with a warlock, the warlock having conceal that way because I usually end up having the issue where I need to do capture objectives and none of the objectives are in cover, so I was like, okay, they'll bring cover with them. And they're armed with a star cannon. Mainly because I wanted them, I was hoping that I had enough anti-tank on the force that I could really go more for a little bit of anti-troop, so I picked that. I then have a troop choice of Storm Squad Guardians with 2 fusion guns and a warlock with enhance. There's a total of 11 Storm Guardians and 1 warlock, making a squad of 12. A lot of people don't really like the Storm Guardians, but I love them. I mean, out of all the Guardian troop choices in there, I always have great luck with these dudes, and I've wrecked a lot of close combat-based armies with close combat-based squads, with a handful of Guardians, with the Enhance. They took out a whole mob of Orcs by themselves. I think they took out Vulcan, they whittled Vulcan down to 1 wound and took out his entire command squad. They've wiped out Sisters of Battle. They've done a lot of... That's not really saying much, because Sisters of Battle aren't really a close combat army, but overall, they're probably my better close combat unit that I have right now. And then I've got a squad of Dire Avengers with an Exarch with Defend and Bladestorm, and I gave him a Dire Sword and a Shrieking Pistol just because I wanted a little bit more close combat edge with these guys, because it's primarily long range, so I figured, you know, I'll just give them a little bit of extra close combat for them and see how it goes, you know, play it up a little. A lot of this was experimentation for me, because I've always played the same Eldar list all the time, and I was like, let me try something different and see what happens. I've got another Falcon. This one was armed with a Star Cannon and Holofields. Oh, both of them had Spirit Stones, Vector Engines, and Holofields. Because I completely skipped over it, I had a dedicated transport to the Storm Guardians, which is a Wave Serpent. Hopefully that'll change the new codex and they'll get another type of transport, maybe one with an assault ramp or something. I don't know, firing points or something? Something to make it actually worth using more than normal. And I gave it the the Shuriken Cannon. They always say Shrinking Cannon. I don't know why, but I do. The Shuriken Cannon, Twin Link Scatter Lasers, because this was going to be going out for troops. So, troop squads because that, you know, the Storm Guardians, you know, find, you know, basically find the, some of the troop choices, thin them down with its weapons, then drop the Storm Guardians and get them into close combat. And Spirit Stone, Vector Engines, and all that good stuff. And a Wraith Lord. The Wraith Lord was armed with a Bright Lance, Shuriken Catapult, and a Flamer, and a Wraith Sword. And it was The Aureliath and his Shadow Spectres pretty much did most of the work, and it just wasn't working out too well. So, halfway through the campaign, which I've done 2 games so far in the second half of the tournament, and we've gotten and so I rewrote the list, changing up a couple of things. So what we're going to do at this point is I'm going to rearrange this stuff, and then we're going to go and do an in-depth of the army that I'm currently using in the game. Okay, so now we're going to go over like some of the stuff that's stayed in the army, just so you can get a nice little closer-up view of everything. But in the current list for troop choices, we've got a squad of Pathfinders, a 13-man squad of Guardians with a Warlock. It's 12 Guardians, 1 Warlock with Conceal, and this Warlock has been a champ in the latest game. He's survived. In turn 2, his entire squad was wiped out. And at the current moment, his leadership check was fine, and he survived up to turn 4 with getting shot at by Grey Knight Terminators, Purifiers, the Rhinos, Storm Bolters, everything that could shoot at him shot at him, and he took it all. I think he'd suffered like a good total of like 10 or 15 wounds of shooting and just survived the whole thing. He then there was 3 Purifiers that that was getting really close to him, and one of them was armed with a Thunderhammer. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to grab the initiative, and I launched him at them. And he, for 2 rounds of combat, was holding off the Purifiers like they were nothing. He took the Thunderhammer, every Thunderhammer shot that hit him, he just took it in stride. He took down 1 Purifier and just tied the Purifier squad up in close combat for the entire time. So I'm now working on trying to think of a name for this Warlock, and when it's not being a Warlock, I'm getting another Farsphere model, probably Eldrad, because I'm going to run him as Eldrad, because clearly this Warlock was destined to do great things. Another troop choice is, again, the Storm Guardians. with the Wave Serpent, nothing's changed there. And the Dire Avengers, and the only thing now that's different, let me put this down here, with the Dire Avengers is the X-Arch. The X-Arch, I now swapped out his arms for another set, and he still has, you know, the Blade Storm singing. Technically, this X-Arch belongs to another squad of Dire Avengers, but I'm using him in this squad until I get the other Dire Avenger squad, because you can actually make two X-Arches in the Dire Avengers kit. And so now he's armed with the two Dire Avenger Shuriken catapults, so he can do the, you know, the Assault 4. And then for heavy sports, we've got the two Falcons. Nothing's changed there. Elite choice, we still have the Fire Dragons. And the HQ choices. I've got now a Avatar of Cain, which I was very happy with how he came out with the paint scheme for him. All the yellow and orange, essentially my attempt at doing a glow effect on him. Was done with the new Citadel paint line, which actually came out pretty nice. I kind of like the new Citadel paint line. I'm not hating it as much as I used to. And the blood effect on his hands were done with some green stuff, and I went to Cote d'Arms. I got the Cote d'Arms paint and purchased the red ink wash. It's not as potent as the old inks, but so I had to so I couldn't do the original trick that I wanted for his hand, which was painting it skull white and then just doing layer upon layer of red ink to get the real blood look effect like I did last time. This time it was really just turning the white hands pinkish, so it wasn't really making deep red effects. But I still like the effect and how it came out. And it still got that shiny, nice look to it. And a squad, a Seer Council. My Farsphere, who's armed with a Shining Spear, Ruins of Warding, Ruins of Witness, Spirit Stones, and he's got Fortune, Guide, Doom, and Mind War. Then he's got two Warlocks with Destructor, two Warlocks with Singing Spears and Enhanced, and one Warlock in the back that has Embolden, or ever how you wish to pronounce it, the Warlock Psychic Power that allows them to re-roll their failed leadership checks. So, overall, as of right now, I think the Force can work. I just have to have a little bit better dice rolling, tweak my strategy a little bit. I did it in the last game, and I did notice a fairly different outcome. I started to see a little bit going, but I was fighting Grey Knights, so I was pretty much getting slaughtered to begin with, because Grey Knights versus Eldars with all their psychic-y and demon stuff wasn't really panning out for me too well. And so right now, one thing that I plan to do now is I just have to base some of the models, and I want to do a little cool like flame effect on the avatars thing. And just one thing note before we go, this avatar is the Finecast version, and one thing I just noted is that recently it's been very hot here on Long Island. Actually today it was 100 degrees, or at least that's what my thermometer was saying. And the avatar here, he was sitting down on the bag like this, and his sword bent completely backwards. Now, usually like Forge World stuff, the models won't bend unless there's massive pressure put on them. On top of their, like, they very rarely buckle and just go on their own. It's usually some sort of force is applied to the model to cause it to bend while it's under the strain of heat. Him, it's very lightweight, so he's not, he wasn't balanced on his sword, he was balanced more on his base and his hair, and his sword still bent. So, if you have a bunch of Finecast models, I highly suggest leaving them on a shelf or something when they're not being used, and only put them in your bag when you're going out, because, yeah, they bend very easily. A lot easier than Forge World. Like, a good example is Forge World models. You need to, like, really put them in a lot of hot water, and you still have to bend to get them to go. He unbent himself the moment the hot water touched him. Like, they bend like that. So, that is all for now. And so until next time, this is Helios Raven, signing off.